Right, so as we are waking up to this morning of the 11th of January 2026, it is safe to say that the Kenyan political scene is heated just 11 days into this new year, and a lot of political activities are taking place. Now, before the People's Mirror today, we want to put before the mirror the statements that were made by Gachagua'S yesterday that had the effect of shaping the political scene right now all the way to the end of 2026, but also has the effect of shaping the political scene in 2027. Now, yesterday you can certainly say that the United Opposition had a field day with the government, whereas the ruling party, which is the UDA party, were conducting their own grassroots primaries across 20 counties in the nation, being 9 counties from the Mount Kenya area and 9 counties from the Rift Valley area and 2 counties from the Western area. The ruling party intended to elect 20 grassroots representatives from each county. Now, this exercise, which was completed yesterday, that elected over 100,000 to 240,000 new party officials of the UDA party, is seen as holding the votes ahead of 2027. But while at it, President William Ruto was among the individuals that showed up in their respective grassroots areas to actually vote for these particular individuals. Now, President William Ruto was seen lining up in the primary school, which is his voting backyard, to actually, of course, cast his votes in these particular grassroots elections that now seek to appoint religious leaders as leaders of the UDA party, professionals in the UDA party, traders in the UDA party, youth representatives in the UDA party, and special interest group. Now, this particular arithmetic leaves you with around 15 individuals that were being elected yesterday per each grassroots election. Now, more on that particular story will perhaps follow later, but for this particular episode, we want to focus on the statements that were made by Gachagua'S yesterday while he was in Ukambani in the burial of Honorable late Joseph Kiilu, who was actually being buried yesterday and who is a father to a particular bishop. Now, this particular gathering had in attendance, including, of course, the individuals that I've said, of course, county governors, senators, member of parliament, and the wife of Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Honorable Dorcas Gachagua, the Reverend, who also doubles as the chairperson of the Pentecostal and Evangelical, is it called the Evangelical, the Pentecostal and the Evangelists clergy group or clergy association of Kenya. It's actually called APEC, so it's the Association of Pentecostal and that word of Kenya, which is chaired by Honorable Dorcas Gachagua. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us first start with the statements that were made by Gachagua, listening from the horse mouth before we make commentary. But it's first important to point out that he began his speech with first, of course, calling the Kambas his cousin, as always, saying that the troubles that have befell the Kamba nation previously was as a result of lack of unity of in-house meeting, of course, of the Kambas and the Kikuyus together. But now he says that they are in the same trajectory right now and they're having conversations moving forward as a family. Now, while he was talking about family, he hinted back, of course, on this particular conversation that the ODM party had previously, and specifically the senator of Homa Bay County, Honorable Kajwang, who told Kalonzo that they do not have problems with Kalonzo, yet they have a reservation with some of the colleagues that Kalonzo work with. Now, the some of the colleagues part has since been interpreted, of course, to mean Rigathi Gachagua, who since the demise of Raila Amolo Odinga has not stepped at Kang'o Kajaramogi to mourn with the family, even if almost all national leaders have since done that. Now, he attacked the ODM, telling them that they cannot want Kalonzo in isolation while they're still in broad-based government, asking them to jump over first and have the conversation with Kalonzo on this other end, but maintaining that the relationship that he has with Kalonzo, of course, is not just based on politics, but stems beyond politics into family. Listen to what he said.
Hi, Makuzo. Cousins, hi. Mumefurahi Kuzo amefika? Makuzo wapendane wasipendane? Waongee wasiongee? Wapange pamoja wasipange? Najua sisi Daktari Kalonzo Musyoka, Wakamba na watu ya mlima tumeenda hasara kubwa sana, kwa sababu watu kwa tunaongea. We are one family, but we never sat together. Any family that does not sit together gets destroyed. Ile hasara yote Wakamba mmepata Ile hasara watu ya Mlima tumepata ni familia kukosa uketi. Lakini sasa tumechanuka kama familia. Si ndio? We stay together as a family. Niliona watu ya ODM wakiambia Kalonzo, sisi tunataka wewe lakini hatutaki yule Rigiji. Sasa utaambia mtu waachane na ndugu yake? Na hao wako kwa Kasongo. Kama mnataka Kalonzo mtoke kwa Kasongo, mkuje muambie mkiwa hapa ndani. Wengine wanakuja kuniambia waachane na hii Kalonzo. Hakuna pahali mtaenda na yeye. Mimi siko na Kalonzo kwa sababu ya siasa. Hapana. Mimi niko na Kalonzo Musyoka kwa sababu hii ni familia. This is a family issue. Na mimi nataka kuambia Kasongo na watu yake, muachane na familia yetu. Siji mko na familia zenu. Mnauliza nini familia yetu? Mambo ya familia mtajulia wapi? Si mambo yetu tunaongea kwa nyumba kama familia. Sasa ile tunapanga kama familia huko ndani, nyinyi mtajua. Wapanga huko kwao kabisa.
Of course, so that was the fiery introduction when he was talking about the family thing. He confirmed, of course, that the relationship that Honorable Kalonzo and Honorable Rigathi Gachagua have stem beyond, of course, the confines of politics and into family matters. And if you're attacking them now based on the fact that that particular family conversation might seem as a tribal conversation, now Rigathi Gachagua has challenged those particular attackers to build on their families first before attacking this particular union. Of course, after that, he went ahead asking Kamba who is their real leader. And after Kamba, of course, shouted that their real leader, of course, is Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. This is bearing in mind, of course, that, you know, as we are talking about regions and politics, when the united opposition core principles meet or go into their different backyard, then it's very funny how the people identify with one of the principles among them as their leader. Now, this is going to be the test of arriving at unity come 2026. And later on within this particular episode, we detail it, where Rigathi Gachagua speaks of the numbers being one of the key factors on the table, because right now as it stands, every region seems to have their candidate that they are fronting as the compromise candidate overally in the in the decision that will be made, that was supposed to be made by this December 2026, but now seems will be postponed to a later date or could even be made earlier. Other than that, of course, he asked the Kambas after they shouted that their leader was Kalonzo Musyoka, Rigathi went ahead and asked the Kambas why then vote for MPs that will not support the idea of Kalonzo Musyoka in the national seat. So this is a new trajectory of politics that is coming out of Rigathi Gachagua, and of course is coming out of the united opposition, where they are not only calling for support of the major seat being the presidential seat, but they want all support to go to the united opposition from as low as the grassroots level. So as the people are going to vote for their MCS, as the people are going to vote for their members of parliament, as they are going to vote for their senators, as they are going to vote for their governors, one steady dream, of course, for the united opposition is that that vote cuts across as a united opposition vote, and no vote should be spilled to the Ruto'S side. Now then, he campaigned for Mbui, who he says is a very good guy, Robert Mbui, who is the deputy minority leader in parliament right now, saying that he is an important foot soldier that of course stood with the united opposition. You remember that Mbui, of course, was very, very key during the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua. He voted no, and of course he's very, very been key in the mobilization of this particular section of Machakos County to actually distance themselves from the activities of the president. Sometimes back, the president was overseeing an event, a national celebration that was in Kamba area, and it was shocking that most members of parliaments boycotted that particular meeting or that particular celebration with the president. Now it's coming out clearly that among the foot soldiers that are actually overseeing the implementation of the policies of the united opposition in the Kamba area is of course Honorable Robert Mbui. But let's first listen to this bit.
So, mimi niulize nyinyi watu wetu. Baito. Kiongozi wenu ni nani? Iko mwingine? Iko mwingine? Na hii chama ya kina Kavaloko inatoanga wajumbe kutoka wapi? Mimi nauliza huko Machakos town, hii Kavaloko anapata wabunge kutoka wapi? Na huyu ndio kiongozi wenu. Huyu kiongozi ataenda wapi bila askari? Mimi nataka nikiwa hapa Kadhiani, si hapa ndio kwa General Mulingi yule alisaidia Jomo Kenyatta. Nyinyi ni wangwana, na nyinyi mnajua mambo ya askari kwa sababu ya Mulingi. Kama kuna constituency imepatia Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka askari, huyu mheshimiwa Mbui ni watu ya Kathiani. This is a very dependable general. Huyu akiweko Kalonzo analala mpaka anaota, akijua hako sawa. Mtashikilia Mbui? Mimi naomba watu ya Kathiani mshikilie huyu mtoto. Kama mnataka kusaidia Kalonzo na mujisaidie, mtamshikilie.
Yep, so that's that. Asking Kalonzo, of course, asking the Kamba people to vote in unity for Honorable Kalonzo in the major election so that he can have strong foot soldiers in this particular competition, but also spending that particular bit of his speech to campaign for individuals that now you can say have stood with the united opposition and with Rigathi Gachagua in this particular area for quite some time. Now, away from the introductory statements, let's delve deeper into this particular speech, which included, among other things, a very key revelation. Now, Gachagua still held, irrespective of whether Kalonzo was present in this meeting or Eugene Wamalwa was, or Matiang'i was absent and the likes, that he is still the dawa ya Kasongo. And so he put bare his presidential aspirations in 2027. Now, this is very interesting because if you trail the politics of the united opposition in the previous year being 2025, a self-declaration as such was one that was hugely being avoided for purposes of keeping unity within the united opposition then, and of course keeping a cohesion between them before the decision is made. But the attack, or rather the approach that they're giving 2026 is quite interesting. Right now, all gloves are off, and Rigathi Gachagua is not only attacking the government with more broad and of course more factual statements and facts that can of course attack the government to that extent, but is also putting it very bare that he is still a fit candidate for the presidential discussion of 2027. And so should the people decide that it's Kalonzo, or should the people decide that it's Gachagua, he still feels that even himself is fit to actually be on this seat. Now, let's make a comment here real quick. You see, sometimes back, people were saying that the constitutional dimensions bars Rigathi Gachagua from actually ascending to that particular point of being picked as the presidential candidate for the united opposition, because the way through which he exited his office as a deputy president was unceremonious. Now, if you go a little bit back, even before Rigathi Gachagua left office, you might agree with me that one of the major concerns of his supporters and Kenyans then was, why not resign and live in a very honorable manner so that you have 2027 as a very clean slate for you to vie against President William Ruto. And against all these concerns, Rigathi Gachagua fought his battles through all the structures that existed, including the Senate, and the only one that he has not exhausted right now is of course the court structures. Now, he has this approach to it. His interesting approach to it is this, that since he has not exhausted the court processes and appeals, the matter has not been concluded before the High Court, the matter has not gone through the Court of Appeal, the matter has not gone through the Supreme Court, then he feels that the decision to ouster him as the former deputy president was illegal and has not met the test of the judiciary to be confirmed whether it was illegal or legal. And so as long as that abeyance is still in place, then he feels like he's still fit to become a presidential candidate in 2027. Now, that's a very technical area of law which can actually work in his favor or against him, because the conclusion of these matters take time. And so if the conclusion would come later on after 2027 August, when the election is already done and he's president, then that particular decision will of course be null and void as per that particular time when the election will have been done, and maybe new petitions will come around that particular area asking for now his removal as a president, which will be a very, very technical process. But if this particular process were to be concluded before 2027, and of course a decision be made that Honorable Rigathi Gachagua was unceremoniously impeached, and so as a result he cannot vie in the 2027 presidential race, then that would put a stop to his presidential ambition. So the test is this: is the courts going to make the decision on Rigathi Gachagua between now and October next year 2027 and August next year 2027 to make a determination whether or not he is fit to vie as a presidential candidate? it. Now that is a call that the judiciary only can answer. And in the comment section, let us know, what do you think? Do you want Rigathi Gachagua in the ballot in 2027, or do you want Rigathi Gachagua out of that ballot in 2027 supporting someone else? So as I said, he said yeye ndio dawa ya Kasongo. He says Ruto calls him tribal, yet he supported Ruto, who is not in any way a Kikuyu but is a Kalenjin, and delivered that particular vote to President William Ruto. Now he asks whether his tribal nature has only now come when he's consolidating the mountain to oust the very president that Rigathi Gachagua believes he installed into power. Let's listen to him.
This is a good foot soldier ya Kalonzo, si ndio? Mimi naomba nyinyi tutembee pamoja. Sisi tumeketi na Kalonzo na Wamalwa na Tembea Matiang'i na kila mtu, na tutasikizana tutoe mtu mmoja. Lakini nyinyi, huyu Kalonzo wenu kama anatukanwa hapa Ukambani na akina Kawaya na wengine na mumenyamaza, heshima atatoa wapi kwingine? Si lazima mfalme aheshimike nyumbani? Kama watoto wanazunguka huko wamepewa pesa na Kasongo wanamtukana, na nyinyi mnakosa kumulinda. Lakini hapa Mumbuni North mlifanya ungwana. At least mlionesha mnaheshimu kiongozi wenu. Mimi niulize tu, hii safari ni mrefu na tutatoboa. Huyu Kasongo mimi ndio dawa yake. Na tunajuana na yeye vizuri. Waswahili wanajuana na nini?
Waswahili hujuana na vilemba. So yes, he says that out of all the people that lives right now, anajuana na Ruto, and yeye ndo dawa ya Kasongo. Now that particular political statement has been seen to actually have an effect of unsettling the united opposition, because if Rigathi's base is a strong base, a base that previously has been known to actually deliver 30% of the votes that decides the 50% plus one on who becomes the president of this country, and Rigathi Gachagua now declares proudly, like he says, that he is the medicine of course William Ruto, because they know each other. And you compare from that particular structures of co-principals who are in the united opposition right now, none of them has worked closer with President William Ruto like Rigathi has towards, of course, delivering the win of President William Ruto and, of course, becoming the first deputy president under his regime. So he is very in a fit position to actually say that he knows Ruto. He knows him well because Waswahili hujuana kwa vilemba. But that's also a question. Should we settle on someone that knows Ruto and is like Ruto because now they know each other kwa vilemba, or should we settle on exactly someone who is opposite? But from the other angle also, you can take a look at it. Should we settle on someone who is opposite to ouster President William Ruto in 2027, where there is someone, or when there is someone who actually knows President William Ruto's deals and can actually face him in 2027? Now that particular decision is causing some unsettlement within the united opposition, whether they are going to settle on a candidate that knows Ruto, as Rigathi says, and is offering himself in that particular seat, or they are going to settle on someone else that does not know President William Ruto or has not worked with President William Ruto yet has the votes to ouster President William Ruto in 2027. A little more listening into that particular news bite, Rigathi now reveals that watu wanamsikiza kama dawa. And that's also another very impactful statement. When people listen to you, then you already have watered the negotiating claims of 2027. And as we still just circle at this part of the news bite, the entry of the united opposition in 2026 is showing a predetermined selection. Just a few days ago, Rigathi was saying in Gikomba area that is actually the fit candidate to ouster President William Ruto. He received some tear gas in Kirinyaga, of course, because that is the backyard of Honorable Anne Waiguru, who is doing her second term and who has promised that actually she is going to ensure that that particular area votes President William Ruto's second term in 2027. Yet that is also part of the mountain area that Rigathi now says is the backyard that he is commanding, and he says these people listen to him. So the decision is going to be made on the table based on voter registration and the numbers that have been presented by the united opposition on who should be the flag bearer. But before that decision is made, it seems right now now that Rigathi Gachagua is taking an early lead with these people, irrespective of the fact that in the previous year, Kalonzo was of course on top of this particular lead. Now let's listen to the place where he says that these people listens to him kama dawa, and of course if the Mau Mau people ousted the white people that were of course dominating this particular country and had come and colonized this particular country, then it will not be difficult for the same Mau Mau people to of course remove President William Ruto. So this was a very interesting analogy, saying that building a house is of course more difficult than destroying it, and he used a lot of resources in building the house that is the President William Ruto's government, but destroying it, Rigathi says, will take him less time than the time that he used to build it.
Mimi ndio nilimsaidia akakuwa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Nilienda pale Mulima nikasanya 3.8 million votes, nikampatia kiti ya rais. Kufika pale akakuwa mjeuri, akanisaliti, akasaliti jamii ya Mulima, akatugeuka, akatupiga, akaanza kutuita wakabila. Siku tulikuwa tunamsaidia alikuwa anasema sisi ni wangwana. Saa ile tumeamua tumemalizana na yeye, anasema sisi ni wakabila. Sisi tukichagua William Ruto alikuwa Mkikuyu, alikuwa Mumeru, alikuwa Mwembu. Sasa anaona sisi kama ni mali yake kwa sababu tulimpatia kura. Hiyo kura hiyo tulimpatia, tukiamua tupatie huyu Kalonzo atadu. Unajua sasa mimi nilimwambia wewe William Ruto, mimi nilikusaidia na watu ya Mlima ukakuwa rais. Nilisanya watu ya Mlima nikakupatia. Mimi nitawasanya wote vile niliwasanya kukusaidia kukupeleka nyumbani. Na yeye anajua mimi nikiahidi kitu mimi nafanya.
And that is that. So yeye akiahidi kitu, of course yeye anafanya. Now he's calling upon the Kamba people to actually take votes and use their votes as the decision to oust President Ruto in 2027. And Rigathi Gachagua'S statements, as I said earlier, now depicts the fact that he took a very central role in building the presidency of President William Ruto, and now he's declaring that of course he will use that very resource to stop down President William Ruto's presidency. Now, furthermore, into his speech, which we will listen to here, the People's Mirror, he asks the Kamba people to actually vote and register up to around 4 million votes. And he says if they register up to around 4 million votes, then this is going to give Honorable Kalonzo a very good bargaining power in the seat of making the decision on who becomes the flag bearer of the united opposition. While at it, he says that Ruto often looks down upon Honorable Kalonzo because Honorable Kalonzo is the exact opposite of President William Ruto. Now, a comment here, the People's Mirror. Later on, we are going to do this particular we're going to do a topic called Inside the Center of course the Ruto Kalonzo battle, to collect news bites of Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and Honorable William Ruto, and the statements that Ruto has since made regarding Kalonzo Musyoka and the replies that Kalonzo Musyoka has made towards him. But the purpose of this is to show you the contradictions when it comes to policy standpoints where Kalonzo comes from and the policy standpoints where Honorable Ruto comes from. Now, as a result of this difference in ideology when it comes to policy, Rigathi feels like Honorable Ruto looks down upon Kalonzo just because Kalonzo is an exact opposite of what President William Ruto is. And he delved even deeper to now talk about the properties that, according to Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, President William Ruto has confiscated, including land which was meant for sewage for the Nairobi people. Now, that's a very interesting take because he has the each land and but the kilometer of road that has been made to access that particular land. For accuracy, let's listen to what he said.
Kwa sababu nilimwambia wewe utakuwa rais, tutakusaidia, na akakuwa. Nimemwambia tutaunganisha watu na Wakenya wengine, utakuwa one time, utaenda nyumbani one way. Na ndio sasa hataki nifanye mikutano. Anatuma guns kunipiga, polisi kila pali, kwa sababu anajua mimi nikiongea na watu huko nyumbani wanasikiza maneno yangu kama dawa. Kwa sababu mimi ni mtu ya ukweli. Sasa ananizuia niongee na hawa. Lakini mimi nimejipanga siku hizi. Akinizuia mimi navaa vizuri, nang'ang'ana, naingia. Jana alinikuwa na nikatasa kufika hapo, nikaongea na watu 20,000. Ndani ya hiyo watu kulikuwa watu kama 300 walikuwa wake. Walipoona vile ametupiga na tear gas wakabiduka wakakuja pande yangu. Sasa yeye vile ajui ile Wakikuyu wako pale ni watu ya maumau. Hawataki fujo na hawataki kutishwa. Walipiga mzungu mweupe akarudi kwao. Sasa kati ya mzungu mweupe na William Ruto nani yako na nguvu? Sasa mimi nimesema hata akinikataza kwenda round Sunday nitaenda Gatundu South wale kwa Uhuru Kenyatta. Nifanye mikutano hapo, nikoroge maneno, niwache mingia laini. Akitaka kutuma watu tutakutana kwa ground. Lakini sasa pia nimeamua because ananitatiza, nimetafuta njia. Monday asubuhi nimeitisha radio inaitwa Kameme. Nitaongea na Wakikuyu for 3 hours. Niwapatie maneno mpaka masikio ikuwe moto. Zinio, nikimaliza niite ile radio za Wakamba. Nipatie nyinyi maneno mpaka masikio ikuwe moto.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. So he intends to have a 3-hour interview tomorrow with a native Kikuyu channel, and his main aim is to ensure that he speaks to his people until their ears become hot. That was a very, very interesting analogy when he said it. It turned out very interesting. And after that, then he will go to the campus and he will do the same. He will speak to them until their ears get hot. Now, later on, just not to recap every bit of what he said, but later on, he explains why Kalonzo is actually an exact opposite of President William Ruto, and even asks the people whether they want to make a choice between a thief and a fool. And if you are of course made to make a choice between mnataka mjinga ama mnataka mwizi on the ballot that day, the people said that they'd rather have a fool than a thief. And Honorable Gachagua confirmed that of course it's good to have a fool than a thief, because having a fool will not have the resources of the country taken away. Now, other than of course the statements that he was making concerning ousting President William Ruto that we have played here, he went further ahead to make very further strong statements on the status of education right now and the northeastern part, and of course this fight that he has been accused of accusing certain governors from the northeastern part from not using the affirmative action resources that they get from the government to develop their areas, yet they are using this particular money for personal use. Rigathi Gachagua now reveals that during his time as the deputy president, while he was going to actually oversee policies of the government in the northeastern area, he used to travel with these leaders in his aircraft and come back with them, saying that these leaders have a strong disconnect with the people. Now, Rigathi is tapping into this particular community because the Somali community is a very sizable vote in 2027, and it seems as the reserve of President William Ruto, if everything else fail, by everything else I mean the mountain and of course the ODM party, if he fails to have those particular blocks, then his tap point is the Somali community and the larger Muslim faith. Now, Rigathi Gachagua has displayed this as it is right now, speaking for the Somali people, saying that their leaders have a disconnect with them to the extent that even schools in those particular areas, given the same allocation with of course schools from other parts of the country, are in bad state, temporary structures, while the same allocation has built good schools and good compounds in other regions. Now, this statement that is speaking to the hearts of the Somali people has been interpreted in the Kenyan political scene as one that is aimed at securing or dividing them when it comes to the 2027 ballot box, not to vote as a union of course as they have been doing before, but to vote basing their voting on the fact that the resources that they are voting for has not been coming to them. Now, that's the last part of the news, but we are going to play, ladies and gentlemen, before we make the final comment.
Their leaders took time to develop good institutions, very good educational institutions. Hapa Machakos muko na Gachagua'S, si ni shule maarufu? Tears Blood Kilungu, tuko Makueni Boys, Makueni Girls, St. Alphosa Kisau, St. Teresa Boni Girls, tuko Boni Boys, tuko Muka Boys, tuko Matiliku Secondary School. Ukienda pale Kitui, iko Kitui High, iko St. Charles Lwanga, iko Modale Girls, iko Gachagua'S. Umesikia juzi nikilalamika. Hizo shule watoto hapa Katiani, max ya kuingia hapa Gachagua'S ni 60. Mtoto wa hapa Katiani ako na 62, ameomba hapo, amenyimwa nafasi. Anapelekwa day school iko Kericho. Ni haki hiyo? Na hii shule wazazi ndio walijenga. Mimi nauliza, wale watoto wote wamepita na ameomba shule ya nyumbani ilijengwa na wazazi wake, apewe nafasi kwenda kwa hiyo shule. It is wrong mtoto hapa Katiani anyimwe nafasi akiwa na 62 max. Mtoto mwingine atoke pahali ingine akiwa na 45 apewe. Na sisi hatuna shida na watu ya Northeastern kwa sababu wanapiga kelele ati wajae mashule hii. Tunasema hata Northeastern shule zijengwe, watoto ya Ukambani waende huko wajuane na wale wa Somali. We are saying kila mtu ajenge shule. Wale magavana na MPs ya Northeastern kwa jumla tangu devolution ikuje wamepata in excess of 1 trillion pesa ya devolution, equalization fund na ya CDF. Wamekataa kujenga mashule. Pesa hiyo yote wanapora, wanaenda kujenga mall Isili, wanaenda kununua apartment Lavington, alafu wanapiga kelele ati watoto yao wakuje wasome hapa Machakos. Sisi naambia watu ya Northeastern, lazima tutetee nyinyi, kwa sababu mtatetewa na nani? Magavana yenu, MPs yenu, senators yenu wanaishi Nairobi. Nilikuwa nikiwa deputy president nikitaka kwenda Mandera, governor, MPs wananiuliza huko na ndege. Nasema ndio, utubebe, tunaenda na hawa, nikimaliza tutarudi na hawa. They stay here in Nairobi. Instead ya pesa ku develop Mandera and Wajir and Garissa, wanna develop Eastleigh na South Sea.
Now that's it. So that is the talk that he was talking about, putting the leaders against the electorates in the northern part of the country, saying that their major focus is not development but to develop the Eastleigh and Nairobi parts at the expense of their people, having a serious disconnect with the people. Now this gloves off speech of Honorable Rigathi Gachagua has unsettled a lot in the Kenyan political scene, and here the People's Mirror, we have done a recap of the key parts of it that was worthy of your consumption this morning. If you missed the entire speech yesterday that was made in Katiani, our following episode will be on the Maduro capture, but specifically on the involvement of the Venezuelans now in the election process of Kenya, with the revelation confirming that the Smartmatics company that will oversee the elections of Kenya in 2027 is actually a Venezuelan company that has gotten into this deal through Honorable Marjan. Keep it here at the People's Mirror until that next episode.